what would be awesome to see in the EverQuest community? Avengers, Aliens versus Predator, Freddy versus Jason. Yeah, we should team up sometimes. It'd be awesome. Thank you for having me, Dr. Nachos. My question for you, if there's one thing you could change in the EverQuest, what would it be and why?
Okay, guys, there's a big question right there. So the question of the day, it's a big question, and we're here with the little podcast panel that we have, and I'll save my answer for later, but I know you guys have a lot of good answers. If there was one question one thing you could change about EverQuest 1 or 2, what would it be? Who wants to go first?
This is a Menti. I'll go.
Yeah.
I think with EverQuest 2, it's a game that I played quite a bit more than EverQuest 1, and I think that was largely because of the combat system and the more like intricate and guided quest system. So I think for me, if anything was going to be good for EverQuest 1 would be like the greater accessibility of like more guided quests so that people understand what's going on. And also probably a little faster and more engaging combat system.
I agree. Anybody else?
Yeah,
This
Greg's
is
here. Oh, go ahead, Salted.
Okay, this is Salted. I've been thinking about it, and now that we're over here in EQ2 land, we're doing raids in a 2x or a 4x format, and I would like to see that implemented into EQ1, where you can have these mobs that, yeah, originally meant to 35 to 50 characters, bring them down, scale them down. Do something where we're going in as a 24-man raid tonight, and everything scales, so it's still challenging, but it's at least doable because we all know the player base isn't there. So it allows the people that are playing to do this stuff without having to rely on the bots.
Very
100%
good.
agree. 100%.
Next.
Okay, Rags here. So I got two things. I'm going to cheat and say I got two. And great points made by Amenti and Salted so far. My first one is bring the graphics up. I mean, Grand Theft Auto did it with version 5. I mean, they updated it purely for the graphics, and it got them a new player base. And I think that's one of the things that maybe turns people off from coming into EverQuest 1, because they look at the new games with all the great graphics and they want to see that same graphics content, and they don't realize that it's the playing content in the game that drives the game. Really, EQ1 came out, literally you came off of tabletops playing Dungeons and Dragons, and the fact that you had any graphics was huge. My second thing is, in addition to having the 2x and 4x, definitely bring the mentoring system into EQ1. This would allow so many people to play with other people and not having to worry about, okay, do we have everybody at the same level, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You can have people who want to move along and get their players up, but at the same time, when they come and do the raids, they can mentor down and everybody can be in the same level. And I would also adjust the mentoring system from EQ2's mentoring system to be so you don't have that huge stat bump still for the high level guys. It tends to make it a little, I'll say, unfair to the game, I think, that you have such a huge bump, when you mentor down like a 90 to a 70 or something like that. But those are the two things I think I'd really like to see on the EQ1 side. And I'll save my comments for EQ2 later when we start talking about it. Yeah.
I would say that that's a really great point about the mentoring system because I think the mentoring system is one of the most brilliant things about EverQuest 2.
Totally agree. Anybody else? I mean, those are great points. Wow.
Yes, this is Augie. And if I had one wish with regards to EverQuest 1, to me, it was the people there that made the game special. I still have very, very fond memories of Triad Continuum on the Luckland server. Very special people. Meso, Odamora, Amanita, Elandril, Valis. Just incredible, awesome, great, special people. And I still miss them. There's a great nostalgia for those times and those people. And if if I had one wish, I'd like to play with them again. But since EverQuest is still around, there's still new friends to be made, and new adventures to be had, and new times to make and new memories to make. So I think that's great.
Well said. Who next?
Well, uh, if I can, this is Worm, and I've been playing EverQuest since pretty much it opened, and as a soloer in general. So uh, I pretty much roamed EverQuest, the world, um, seeing the sights, and that's really, excuse me, what I wanted to do is see the sights. I mean, running up to the Dragon Bridge in Eastern Waste is incredible. If you've never seen it before, or one of the dragon rings, coming up on one of those in the middle of nowhere. So Rags is, correct. We need that, uh, the better graphics. And also, I think well taken is his talking about the mentoring system and adjusting that for EverQuest 1, because after so many years of soloing and maybe small content, I went into a guild looking for raids. And pretty much, if you're lower level, you can't get groups, even in a huge guild. It would just make it so easy for some guild members to mentor down to you and take you out and get you some levels.
Well said. Anybody else? Okay, well, I'll tell you what I think. Definitely, I agree with all you guys. They're all great points, and playing both EQ1 and EQ2 has really opened my eyes. And welcome aboard, Pastor Faps out there. I would say too, the mentoring system, and especially agnostic dungeons, and that's the way you equate that is in EQ1 is that's like in EQ1 we always wanted a power leveling center. And the agnostic dungeons are it. You can go in there, you never, no risk of dying, you're going to get loot and everything. That's the greatest idea ever. And I like the mentoring system too, even though it is a little OP'd, it's still really, really good. It lets everybody play together. Unlike EQ1 has shrouds, which are, a joke, and the plane of knowledge power leveling center it's nothing like an agnostic center, but those are great things. Also, they need really good graphics. If you guys have seen places like Unrest, Plane of Fear, and you've seen them in EQ2, you're just like, wow, that's really good. But if they even put, good graphics in there, like from New World, that would make the game the best game ever. So I really feel that number one, they should change the graphics. Like, I don't know, I know it can't be done, but it would be kind of cool if they could get all the people that got fired from New World, because that game's almost dead, and then put them over here in EQ 1 and 2 and make some new graphics. Do something like that if they could, or take the guts out of EQ and put it in New World. Either way, that's New World's carcass or whatever. Make something good, but they got to get some good graphics in there. At least change the models or something, because if you go through Underfoot, you see the new models. The models look cool, and it makes the game a lot better. But at least get some models in there, get some graphics, do something. I mean, it's the graphics are so old in EQ1, it really needs a facelift, and that's all they have to do. Just put some nice graphics in it. And the other thing I think is that corpse runs. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, who else has got an opinion?
Katz, I'd like to add something to yours, and to the guys who maybe know more about programming, because I know some of you guys have had some experience doing it. To me, one of the biggest challenges, it seems like, because both my sons have been involved in developing both card type deck games and involved with some companies that they were asked to consult with for developing computer games. Um, Developing the artwork is huge and takes a lot of effort. And to me, it's like, well, you already have all of the concept, all of the artwork already done. Basically, what you have to do now is you have to tune it. You have to maybe make it look better. You have to put new skins on it. And I'm just wondering, you now have Unreal Engine. You now have also programming sources, I'll say, in China, India, Indonesia, way lower cost places than you would have if you were using US programmers who can do that work, and are very talented people. And does that start bringing it into the realm of, okay, it's cost effective to do it? Yeah, you're still probably making a 10, $20 million input into it, but considering how much they make per year, is that a realistic, viewpoint?
Good point.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, again, with game engines in general, like the idea of the game engine, like we are talking about before the stream started, has changed a lot since EverQuest was originally created, right? So this 3D graphics engine that EverQuest is based on was built prior to this idea of a fully packaged third-party game engine. So it doesn't have the features, functionality, back-end programming, or even language support that a modern game engine would have. So like it's probably a lot harder to do a graphics overhaul than most people think, because like the custom renderer like software, for example, built into the engine probably doesn't support a lot of modern graphics features, things of that nature. But also when you're talking about graphics, a lot of people are talking about like the grandeur of the design, right? There's EverQuest has like this 20-year-old library, 23-year-old library of amazing concept art and artwork and everything that they could base new content on, but then they would have to start changing the actual geometry of the zones, right? Which changes gameplay and pathing and things of that nature, right? And that all has to be factored into the decision to like change a zone as well. So it's a lot more work than I think people give it credit for. Although it's fair point that there are resources that people can draw on. There are these new graphics engines. There are new tools. But then Darkpaw would have to learn how to utilize those tools for development of their game specifically.
Yes, good point there. So anybody else? Anybody else have ideas?
I just thought of one as a change specifically for EQ1. It's a 23-plus-year-old game. Everybody's playing in the high end. They now have Epics 1, 1.5, and 2. Redo the Epic 1.0. The long slog does not have to be there anymore. People are just jumping past it anyways, but for nostalgia's sake, some people may want to do it. Take out the 4-day wait for a mob to spawn. There's no need for that at this point in the game's life.
Yes. Now, guys, what would you change with EQ2 if you could?
So the thing I think catches Regs again, I would change in EQ2 is I would bring in the density of raiding, questing. As Wormfood said, he soloed because there was so much solo stuff he could do, and just visiting zones and doing things. That's the one thing that seems to me in EQ2 is that you don't have that same incredible density of amount of quests that you can do or things that you could go after. The achievement tree, it's just not the same as the EQ1 achievement tree. And I think that's the part I would bring in.
How about you, Menti? What would you do since you played a lot of EQ2? What would you change in EQ2? One thing.
To be perfectly honest, I think the later expansions have gotten a little out of control with the stats, damage, and things of that nature. Um, I would try to dial that back a little bit and maybe even do a complete stat refactoring across the board, kind of like what WoW did with their stat squish and complete leveling like revamp. They used to have like 100 something levels, then they brought it back down to 60 and rescaled everything. Right? They redid all their equipment, all everything, so that it fits 60 levels again, and the newest expansion topped out at 60. Right? I would do something like that, where it brought everything back under control, and you didn't have to make these massive, like exponential leaps in gear between expansions. I liked the fact that you can go from, like back in the day in EQ2, you can go from one expansion to the next with only a slight tweak of gear or even overlapping gear, or some of the stuff from the previous expansion, if it was in the same tier, carried over and it was still a really good item and was very valid for a long time. I like that. I like being able to hold my gear for a little bit longer rather than having to completely replace everything every time something comes out.
EQ1, they consolidated a lot of AAs and did stuff like with the stats. They did a little bit of that because it used to be armor class was like twice as high, and then they halved it. And so they did something like that, and I think it worked out. If there's one thing I could change in EQ2, I would change the models, because one of our viewers mentioned, she said that they look like claymation models. And I think so, because I like the EQ1 models. The original ones look really good. I think the animations and the expressions on the face, even though they look like blow up dolls, but they look really good, and the trolls look cute and all that. So I would put in some better models in EQ2 to fix that.
I don't know if I agree with that. I think there's definitely things like, again, with modern graphics engines where it makes skin look more realistic. Even up until Unreal Engine 3, like the skin of characters looked very plasticky. And although the EQ2 engine, I think, does end up with that kind of clay texture to a lot of the characters, they do also have all the alternate appearance characters as well that I don't think a lot of people use in our guild anyway.
Yeah. Yes?
Katana, if there was one thing I could change in EQ2, it would be to make trade skilling more relevant.
Okay, go ahead and explain.
Well, it used to be back when you were crafting your own gear and your own spells, that they were actual upgrades, and you couldn't just go to a dungeon and get something that was twice as good.
I see.
I think a lot of that goes back to like gear scaling, and how these most recent expansions get just a little too crazy with like the exponential leap between expansions of like gear and stats and damage and everything else.
Now, how would you guys compare the EQ1 epic to the EQ2 epic? Like, Salty, what do you think?
It's much easier to get over here because I just did the kanji epic. I started it yesterday and I finished it today. But
Yep.
I was also using a 120 to do it. So doing it real time, you would probably definitely need some help, which I probably could have gotten here. But it doesn't seem that slog, that grind. So it's epic, but it's not as epic as it was back in the day when we all originally did it. Because I know on the tribunal, when I got my ranger, the first lightning sword, like I was bouncing off the walls. It was an epic thing to do. So I don't get that feel over here. It's it's just another piece of gear that I'm probably not going to use in a week because we're going to bump up to 90 and we're going to get better stuff. So it's not as epic, but maybe back in the day on EQ2, which I wasn't here for, it might have been a bigger deal.
Yeah,
it was a much bigger deal.
When I played Enchanter on EQ1, the staff of Shisar required an enormous amount of manpower and teamwork, and everyone getting together to help out, one member of the guild multiple times. And, when I finally got it, it was just a symbol, not of Shisar or not of, the clicky, speed that it gave me, but it was a symbol of all those people who came together, for one moment in time to help me, and as I did for many others. So, that's what the epics on EQ1 mean to me.
Yeah. Wow.
I'd say that the epics, when they came out in EQ2, they were much more of an event because the content was current. It required like group and raid content. So that's one thing. But I think that the epics in EQ2 made a lot more sense than the ones in EQ1 because the ranger in, for example, I played a ranger in EverQuest 1 also. But the ranger in EQ1, you got the sword, right? And I was like, well, why didn't I get a bow?
Yep, and the thing is Enchanter one, why'd they give that to him? Because, you just log out your Enchanter anyway and then log him back in after everybody's dead. That's what I know happened to me.
Yeah. And Cats is right. Like I say, I just checked the Warlock epic versus what I've currently got equipped. It's like half. And I can't get the epic until level 80, and I'm wearing a level 80 agnostic weapon.
Oh, that's
and
funny.
I'm like,
yeah,
guys, you could get your first epic weapon in EQ1 level 50, And yeah, as you got more expansions, unfortunately, they got gear in the game that kind of wiped it out. But when the game first started, I remember it was like, okay, hey, as a paladin, getting that flamey sword, that was a big deal. I mean, that was kind of the best paladin sword you could get until I think it was Luckland came out, and then it was like, you got to be kidding me! You just wiped out all the epics, and I think that's been a problem as they brought the expansions out. It was, it's the whole thing of, what is it? My sons call it, put more shinies in the game. You keep beefing up the stats, and it's like, guys, make the epics relevant. The other thing I would say is if you're going to have epics in the game, why not make them so that as players level up, they have opportunities to do things to increase the ability of their epic?
Mm.
I mean, to me, an epic weapon should be that's the best weapon in class that character can have. That's why it would be worth saying, okay, yeah, I got to put a lot of time, pain, and effort into doing this, but it is and always will be the best weapon in the class. Even as I level up, it will continue to be best weapon in the class. Yeah. You know, and you can still stay okay. Yeah, if you do some of the super raids, where you have to have, an EQ2, if you have to have a 4X group of everybody at top level gear and everything, and it's a very challenging raid, and you get wiped out 6 times before you ever complete it. Okay, maybe you do drop a weapon there that's better. In an EQ1, okay, you have to have a full 72-person raid in order to try and get the weapon, and it's a very rare drop. But, that's the thing that just confused me, both in EQ1 and EQ2. Why were the epic weapons not given the prominence that they should have had?
Yeah.
Well, a lot of that goes towards motivational psychology and like the design of MMOs to keep people playing, right? You can't simply have a weapon that stays static, for this massive amount of time unless it's got a whole supporting architecture around it. And unfortunately, it takes a lot of time to design something like that. Like, okay, so every expansion after we introduce epics, we then have to create a quest line or something, some event around upgrading your epic weapon, right? To make it current with the current expansion. And I think EverQuest 2 tried that for a bit because they did the epic weapons, then they did the enervated epic weapons in Otis, right? And that was good. I like that. But then they kind of dropped it after that because
Well,
it does take a lot of design.
yeah, and they did the 1.5 and they did the 2.0, and then you could get the gem. But the problem was, by the time it started introducing those in the game in EverQuest 1, there was so many better weapons you could get, literally almost buying from the vendors, you know, that were open drops. And it just was like, guys, the only reason you do epics is kind of like to say, okay, I ticked the box, you know. There's very few classes where it's like the epic weapon is something that you will continually use as you move up through levels. And I thought, that's where you missed the boat. And I always thought that from the start. Once the Luckland expansion came out, I thought, EQ, you missed the boat. You should have kept making it that the epics were the best attainable weapon there was, and that it really meant something to see someone walking around with an epic weapon.
With the advent of gems in EverQuest 2, I think they have a potential solution to that problem because they can make your epic weapon like a dang infinity gauntlet, right?
Yeah,
Where
exactly.
there's a huge quest to get your next gem, but like your next gem upgrades the damage and the stats and this and that and gives it a new ability, right? And you can continue to scale the weapon and make it more awesome every expansion.
That would
Yeah,
be
you could
good.
do it. I mean, it could be like every 5 levels, you could say, okay, yeah, hey, I start out with the white gem, then I go to the, blue gem, then the red gem, then the yellow gem, then the green gem, then the purple gem or whatever. And it keeps your weapon relevant, maybe adds new spells, maybe changes effects on it. And that to me should be very simple programming. And
That's very doable, I think, even
yeah,
with the current engines and even the systems they have in place, because they already have all those systems, right? And that's part of the problem with some of the other upgrades people have suggested is they don't have the systems in place to support them.
One other thing that I just thought of that I think EverQuest 1 really needs is in EQ2, what I really like about it is that when you go raid, every single class is needed in the raid. I mean, every single class contributes and is super important. It's not like in EQ1 where druids are useless and you only need one enchanter for the whole raid because you can log them out. And you just have a bunch of clerics and DPS and you got your 2-3 tanks and that's it, you know. But EQ2, every class is needed. I wish they had that over there and there weren't any like throwaway classes.
Yeah, it just sounds like EverQuest 1, if it was going to try to survive through the modern era or even grow its player base at this point, it would need some new class balance and redesign.
Yeah, like Rangers should have feigned death.
They do. They
No, they have a real
though,
one.
right?
They have a real
Once
feigned
per
death.
round.
It's the most convincing feigned death because it's real.
Yep.
So that's a funny thing.
But I think
Cats,
you hit a
I like
good
the
point,
traveling.
Cats. Yeah.
What's that, Boshaw?
Hey, I'm sorry. I like the traveling options in EQ2. I wish that were over in EQ1.
Oh,
you
yeah.
just pick a place and just go there.
Yep, I like that too. Give you guys an example I've given before. Is one time we were going to do a raid, and it was about 15 minutes before the stream was supposed to start, and we figured out we didn't have the requirements to start it. And this is an EQ2, so we're like, oh my gosh, what do we do? And we're like, okay, go to Plan B. Everybody just go back to the guild hall, and we were able to jump over to the second raid, and we started the stream up within 15 minutes, and we're ready to start the next raid. Now in EQ2, it takes me about an hour and a half to set everything up. And you've got
EQ1.
so much. I mean, EQ1, yeah, it takes about an hour and a half to set everything up, make sure nobody gets lost, make sure nobody's dead or whatever, and to get actually everything going because people crash or whatever. But in EQ2, it's just like you get up and you go and you play. The action is right there waiting for you.
You know, Cats, that could be so easy to implement too in EQ1 because all they need is a return to guild hall button, just like you have in EQ2, and that it has a very short cooldown time. You know, I think was it EQ2, it's a 10-minute cooldown time. Same, put that same effect into EQ1. Then you have the portal system within the guild hall, and you're in the plane of knowledge where you've got all the portal stones also. Yeah.
Single person banner in EQ1 would rock.
Oh, yeah. And,
Oh yeah, Guild Banner's awesome.
and that kind of goes along with what Glass Giant said out there. He said, I'd like to be able to play EQ1 solo without having a group of 6. Well, we got the guy here that leveled the Shadow Knight all the way to 120. That's Worm over there in the panel you see here. So Worm leveled the Shadow Knight to 120. Can you believe that? Worm, tell us how you did it because you can do it in EQ2. EQ1, forget it. It'll never happen.
Yes, but then what would happen to naked tank runs, for corpses? What would whatever happened to having to sit and med and look at your spell book and be oblivious to your surroundings while critters waiting to kill you with one blow sneak up behind you? Where's the love for that?
Yep. Worm, how'd you
It's
do
on
it?
P99.
Oh boy, I have stories
Oh,
about
that's
corpse
true.
runs like you wouldn't believe. Really, 6 in one day, and it was on the same corpse. But as far as getting an EQ2 soloing all the way up to 120 was actually a fairly easy process. I just followed. There's quest lines, signature quest lines, and being a tank and grabbing a healer merc on top of to follow me around. I just ran these signature and heritage quest lines. And pretty much by the time I got through those quest lines, I had a full set of armor for the next tier and, was pretty much on that next tier. Go to the next set and off you go all the way through. And partway through, I don't know, I'm level 100 or something like this, you get a nice little pet that crank it up to Grandmaster and it kills things for you. So that's a Shadow Knight's tale as a full tank. I haven't done it yet with caster class.
Oh, that's good, Worm. That's good to know because coming from EQ1, I was always thinking like, oh, what class you need. But it looks like in EQ2, it's got something for the solo players because if you can get a Shadow Knight and level him to 120 and pretty much solo him up there, that's really fantastic. So for you guys out there that have asked that question, you want to be in EQ2 if you want to get a character to solo up there, and especially those heritage quests. Those are good to do. They're good content. They put a lot into the quest. I think the quest system is way better in EQ2. It's much more involved, and they're like real quests, not just like go over here and wait there 6 days until the guy spawns, and then if he drops a thing, then you come back to me. If not, you can repeat the process. But yeah, that's really good to hear.
Well, as a big difference, because I soloed all the way through EverQuest 1 as well, several characters through there. And the biggest difference between EverQuest 1 and EverQuest 2 was the quest support. Like I say, the quests took me all the way through EverQuest 2. However, in EverQuest 1, they're harder to find, and they don't necessarily follow a good line.
That's true. And also, I think in EQ1 to get to 120 solo, even with a merc, that's probably impossible unless you have the Overseer. Now, Overseer is what they put into EQ1 to allow people to, solo up past like whatever, 105 but EQ1 it's just basically impossible. You need a group, even at the early levels, to do anything in the game. But yeah. Well, good points, guys. Anybody else have anything to add to that? What would you do if you could do one thing to EQ1? Anybody who hasn't had a chance to add some input? Okay, well, I guess not. So, guys, thanks for joining us. We will be back with our regular EQ2 raids. That'll be coming up in about 15-20 minutes. So make sure you join that. If you missed it last night, you got to see Wuoshi destroy us with his perma-stun, and they have made the things harder, just like the guy that gave us, the crab that gave us a lot of bites. I was going to say something else, but they've made it a lot harder, so there's plenty of challenge, and this year it is much scarier, so make sure you join us for that. And thanks for participating, everybody. We'll see you out there. Make sure you visit Ion Blaze's channel too. It's really one of the better up-and-coming EQ1 channels. I think that channel is going to be a really good one. You look at the content he's got on there. He's got so many funny videos, good videos, and all that, and good quality too. The production quality is very, very good. So check it out. If you're unsure of how to spell it or where to find it, you can see it on my homepage under the channels that I like to watch. I have a couple others in there too. So check it out and see you at the next live stream, guys. Coming right